All right, so hey everybody, welcome to what I think is our 5th meeting of ACM this semester. So thanks everybody for coming out. We've got great attendance tonight, which I didn't actually expect. If you haven't done so yet, go to acmuc.org/c and check in for me. That's how we track our attendance for voting rights, for being on our website, and to know how many people to buy food for so I don't mess up like I did tonight. So a quick heads up, which I've mentioned in all of our meetings, it's still true. We are recording right there in the back, which means that afterwards you're going to be able to see all of our slides and videos online, but it also means that you are being recorded right now, not really visually, but audio. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask as we talk. So I want to mention our ACM at UC Member Directory. Once you've gone to 2 meetings, we encourage you to submit yourself to be on the ACM at UC website. You can get there by going to our GitHub organization and going to our website link right there. And if you go to the membership directory, you'll find instructions for submitting a pull request and being on the ACM at UC website. So it's a way to say, hey, I was actually in ACM, because you'll get to put a picture of yourself, a little bit of contact information, and a bio. And you'll be up there with all of the other ACM members who have submitted themselves. And that's something you can do once you've attended 2 meetings a year. That's also a pull request for Hacktoberfest, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So I want to mention our academic services, because we do still hold office hours twice a week, on Mondays from 6 to 7 p.m. and on Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. So come in, talk to us about questions on homework. Maybe you're studying for midterms or your final shortly and you want to go over a subject you don't quite know as well. Well, we've got some upperclassmen exec and some younger exec who might even be in those classes with you, and you can kind of look at things together. Or if you just want to come and work on a project or talk with us, or you're doing homework on campus, come hang out with us. It's a pretty nice space. It's at 802A. We call it the glass fishbowl because you can see everything inside, and don't tap on the glass. It startles the programmers. So Slack, if you're not on our Slack, you're missing out. It's acmcincy.slack.com/sign up if you are not on there. It's the way we share information about meetings, about events, like local hack day, which I haven't shared in general yet, have I? I need to do that. About opportunities when companies reach out to me about opportunities for ACM at UC members. We don't usually send those out over the listserv. We share those in Slack. So join our Slack. You can make a channel if you want a channel. There's plenty of channels for things from memes to music to gaming, or even things like homework help if you just have a quick question about homework or a programming problem you're working on. So I just mentioned to Noah about Local Hack Day and how I haven't posted about it in general yet. Well, we are holding a Local Hack Day again this year. So by show of hands, anybody come to our Local Hack Day last year? It was a pretty lit time, guys, right? It was good. It's a 12-hour event on December 2nd. It's simultaneously held around the world at pretty much every major university in the United States and plenty of universities abroad as well. It's a collaborative event held by Major League Hacking, where all these people come, and at the same time they're all coding and hacking away in their individual locations. So ours is going to be in Campus Recreation Center, 3200, on December 2nd, which is a Saturday, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And you can really think of it as a mini hackathon. There's going to be swag, there's going to be free food, and it's going to be a good time and a good chance to work on some programming projects in a fun environment. Sign up at localhackday.mlh.io. You'll go there, and I think I have it pulled up. And you'll be able to search up the University of Cincinnati. You click on attend, and you should be able to just type in Cincinnati, and we'll come up. And all you have to do is go in there and sign up. So it's going to be a good time. So I mentioned submitting a pull request to be on our ACM at UC website could help you towards Hacktoberfest. That's a good idea, especially now as we're running out of time. If you haven't heard about Hacktoberfest, it's an initiative put on by GitHub and DigitalOcean in an effort to encourage open source collaboration. So what Hacktoberfest is you go to hacktoberfest.digitalocean.com or just Google Hacktoberfest. You sign up and then submit 4 pull requests to any open source repository on GitHub during the month of October, and DigitalOcean will, for free, send you a t-shirt, some stickers, and maybe some other swag. So it's a cool chance. If you were looking for an excuse to participate in open source, go out to Hacktoberfest, and you've only got, what, 3 or 4 days at this point to do it. So, but any pull request, even if you're just collaborating on a friend's project, maybe you're going out and collaborating on a larger open source project, or maybe you're just submitting yourself to be a member on the ACM at UC website. They all count. You just have to submit 4 before the end of October. So our next meeting is going to be Thursday, November 9th at 6 p.m. in Swift 819. We don't actually have a topic for it yet, but if you have a suggestion, come talk to us. We're busy right now, so we're running a little bit behind on our scheduling. But I know that the meeting after that will just be a hangout because it'll be our last meeting. So we're still looking for a topic for the next meeting, but if you want to put it in your calendars, it's Thursday, November 9th at 6 p.m. in this room again. And I promise I'll buy more pizza or food if we do something more interesting than pizza. So the bulk of our meeting today is going to be about competitive programming. Well, maybe bulk's not the right word. It's I'm going to talk a little bit about some strategies for going in for competitions, specifically ICPC, which is this weekend. I know a number of people in here are competing. If you've ever competed in a competitive programming competition, probably a lot of what I'm going to tell you are already aware of. But I'm just going to do some broad overall strategies, talk a little bit about the questions you might see, and then at the end we're going to break into small groups, especially if you are an ICPC participant. You can work with your team, and we can do some practice problems, either from a preset of ICPC problems that have happened in the past, or on HackerRank. So there are a lot of opportunities to practice competitive programming and to compete in competitive programming. ICPC, which is the Intercollegiate Competitive Programming Contest, is that right? No, I'm wrong. What is it? International Collegiate Programming Contest, you're right, is the big one. It's held by ACM, ACM Nationals, which we are a student chapter of, and it's around the world in regional competitions, which are happening for the Midwest this weekend, and then the winners from those regional competitions go on to World Finals. It's a pretty big deal to make it to the World Finals of ACM ICPC, so that's a big one. There are websites like LeetCode and HackerRank, and I don't know about LeetCode, but I know that HackerRank regularly hosts online competitive programming competitions. LeetCode does too? Cool. Yeah, so you can go online and you can do competitive programming competitions. I want to say asynchronously, but I'll get yelled at. Against other people from around the world, sometimes for prizes. University Code Sprint was just on HackerRank a couple weeks ago, and that was a chance for universities across the world to compete with each other through HackerRank. There's Google Code Jam, which is another big programming competition, and then there are plenty of other ones, from small local competitions to larger international or global or United States competitions. And in a way, I think that technical interviews are an extension of competitive programming with a little bit of a different focus, because you're going to be given a problem and you're going to be asked to solve it. So a lot of the skills you might take from competitive programming can also carry over to technical interviewing. So a big part of today's meeting is actually talking about ICPC tomorrow for the participants. So Dom and a couple other people who have competed before, if I say something wrong, which is possible, correct me. But there are a couple of rules about ICPC. There's no internet, so that means you can't go out, you can't go to Google and Stack Overflow questions. You have to use what's in your head or in a reference book. We're allowed to bring reference books, right? So you are in a specific environment for local ICPC. That's actually Ubuntu. We're going to be booting Ubuntu onto computer lab machines, and that'll be the environment you have to use. You'll connect to an online service. So you do technically have internet, because you're allowed to connect to a central server to submit your problems to, and it's got a web page and a leaderboard and things like that. So you are in this specific environment. You're given the chance to use C++, Java, and I believe Python. Is that correct? Or is Python?
C, C++, Java, Python 2, Python 3. Yeah, there's some other shit, right? Yeah. There's a lot of languages.
Okay. Cool. So apparently there are a lot of languages you are allowed to use, but the main 3 that people typically use in these competitions are C++, C, Java, and occasionally Python.
Python can do anything you want.
It can do it shorter too. I love Python. I say that Python is easy mode for HackerRank. But you'll be able to ask online judges any questions you have. If you are reading the question for ICPC and you have a question, clarification, there are online judges you'll be able to talk to. That's who you should talk to instead of organizers at the event. You're only allowed to talk to your own team, which means no cross-collaborating. Even if you have another UC friend on a different team, you can't work together, only among your own team. Excuse me. And then you'll submit your solution to judges who will verify your solutions and move you up the leaderboard. So like I said, most programming competitions take place primarily in C, C++, Java, or Python, though some allow other languages. C++ is a great option specifically because of the standard library, which is valid in all programming competitions. Yeah?
Do you not use anything outside the standard library? Any validity?
For C++?
For any?
No, you can't import other libraries.
Yeah, so competitive programming tips that I'm going to go over today aren't really a whole lot different from typical test-taking tips. You'll probably recognize some of them from when you were doing test-taking practice for the ACT and things like that. But the big thing is going to be to practice. The best way you're going to succeed in a programming competition is by going out to these online websites and doing practice problems, learning your algorithms, your data structures, and your standard libraries and the things they can offer you. So specifically for ICPC, well, all problems really, you're going to have a specific structure. There's always going to be a problem statement, an input they're going to give you, specifically an input format. They'll always tell you how to expect your input, and they'll also tell you the kind of output they're expecting from you, usually with specific limits and rules around how to output. There will be constraints, and sometimes execution time limits, and sometimes memory time limits. Not all competitions employ those, but some do, so be mindful of them if they're listed. And then each problem will be represented as a real-world problem, but try and translate it into more CS things like your data structures and your CS terms. So when you're given an example, just like you might take a real software engineering problem and convert it into how you might represent it in a data structure, you're going to be taking those same skills and using them here on these problems. So some problems, for a lot of competitions, the problems aren't going to be in any specific order of easiest to hardest. They could be the hardest one, then the easiest one, and then from there random or things like that. So you really won't know going in which one is the easiest problem to solve. In ICPC though, there's always one or two very easy problems. Well, not very easy, but easy problems, which you can probably pick out by looking at the leaderboard and looking, I believe Waterloo is always a pretty strong team, right? So you can see what problems they did first, and you can probably use that to figure out which ones if you want to start off easy. So just because you see a hard problem though doesn't mean you should skip it. You know, in a test they always say if you get to a problem and you have no idea what the answer is, you should skip it and come back to it later. Well, here you're going to need to solve these eventually, right? So in ICPC, I believe the contest is around 5 or 6 hours, right? So you have time to look at every problem. So if you read the problem and decide, no, I'm moving on, you're probably wasting a little bit of time because you're going to need to reorient yourself later. So don't just say, I have no idea how to do this. Take a second to think about it. Sketch out. Try and convert it to those CS data structures and convert it to your computer science terms. And then, you know, if it does look like this is one that you're going to spend a lot of time on, definitely strategize to do the easier problems first. Get the give me points. I know how to do this problem, or I'm familiar with this problem, so do those ones first. But don't necessarily immediately write off the harder problems. You never know. You might be looking at it, and those 2 minutes you spend sketching things out on paper, it could click for you, and that's something you don't want to miss out on. So, just like an interview, sketch out ideas before working on an implementation. You don't really have the time to start a problem and then throw the whole thing out multiple times. Well, you do have the time. You have 5 hours for approximately 6 problems, I believe. But they're hard. So, sketch the idea out before you start working on an implementation. It'll help make it easier to get things straight in your mind, what's going on, and it'll save you time when you actually start coding. You should look for your edge cases, and if you're timed, you should also consider your easy optimizations, not necessarily while you're sketching it out, but once you've got a working solution and a rough solution going. And then you should always double check your output and input specifications. When I'm doing things like HackerRank, I consistently submit my problem and realize that, oh, I kind of missed the input specification a little bit, or I messed up how I was printing out the output, and it's easy to be off by little things. So double check those things before you submit, because you can be penalized in some competitions for submitting bad solutions. So in ICPC specifically, and for plenty of other programming competitions as well, you have teammates, and in ICPC you only have one computer. So you need to take that one computer and spread it amongst your 3 teammates while also being able to use the collective mind power of your teammates. So if you're on a team, you all probably have different areas of familiarity and expertise, so use that to your advantage. As you're reading through the problems, you can say, oh, this looks like a problem Joe Schmo over here, he's really good at these types of problems. Or Billy Bob over here, he's really good at these types of problems. So you can easily spread out and say, okay, you start looking at this one, you start looking at this one, because if you're doing things like sketching it out and thinking through the solution before you start mindlessly typing, there are things to do that aren't just typing on the computer and actually writing the program. So yeah, teams that work separately have had historically good results because you're able to work on up to 3 things at once. But with only one machine, like I said, you have to budget your typing and testing time amongst the different people. Yeah?
Are the questions on the computer as well, or is that a hard copy?
The questions are on the computer, but you are also handed out a packet with at least 1 copy. Are there multiple copies of the questions?
Yeah.
I think there's only 1 copy of the questions, but it's multiple pages, so you could tear it apart if you needed to. Yeah, you do have a hard copy for ICPC. But with, like I said, with only 1 machine. Oh, Andrew, go ahead.
This is specific to ICPC, but do you know if you can, like, can I bring my own keyboard to print that out loud?
That's a good question. I don't know. You could bring it, and then we can clarify with Dr. Franco and Michael when we get there. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I also sent out the rules last night in an email, so you could check there to see if it says. So I don't know that they would cover that though.
I would guess no.
Yeah, my immediate thought is no, because I guess there would be ways to cheat like that, right? So I don't know. Like I said, oh, Noah, you didn't get the email? Oh, that's because you didn't sign up through me. You signed up through Dr. Franco. So, okay. So I will forward that to you and your team. Remind me to do that. And if anybody else signed up not through me and you didn't get an email last night with details on ICPC, you should ping me because I can send you that. It has things like when to show up and etc. So, like I was saying, divvy up the problems. You might realize one person has an idea on how to target something that the other person doesn't. And so you can use that to your advantage. And you need to understand, though, that if somebody's handwriting code or sketching out ideas, they're going to have logic and certainly syntax errors unless you are the absolute image of perfection and you have all the syntax and compiler rules memorized. So mind debugging is another thing that's going to be really useful. That's something you're going to use in your technical interviews as well, sitting there and being able to think through your code without actually running it, and think about the edge cases and track your variables as you go through, because like I said, you only have 1 computer, and so only 1 thing can be happening on that at the time. So you won't be able to be constantly switching and debugging. Yeah?
Having done this last year, one thing that was helpful, can I say something?
Yeah, go for it. If anybody has something helpful they'd like to contribute.
Just have 1 person code when you're doing this, and just give all the code to that person, and then maybe have to work with someone else to debug. But if you keep on switching out who's sitting and coding, environments changing, it'll be a lot of overhead for no reason.
I didn't see your hand, did I? Cool. All right. So I know it's a little bit late for ICPC, but it certainly won't hurt to refresh, or if you're going into other programming competitions, a couple of things to study is certainly your basic data structures, your trees, your maps, your queues, your linked lists, and all of your things like that. They are all going to be, not all, but you're going to see a wide variance of all these subjects. Ooh, spooky. You're going to see a wide variance of all these subjects during your programming competitions. So those are definitely things to know, and that's another thing you need to know for technical interviews, right? So practicing for these competitive programming competitions is also a chance to practice for technical interviews. So your standard template library, dynamic programming, which is definitely useful, graph algorithms, sorting and searching. You should know your different sorting and searching algorithms and maybe even how to implement them. Your basic mathematics and how computers represent data. Occasionally bit manipulation is used and things like that in the harder problems. And then also regular expressions can be useful. So, and these are all things that specifically for ICPC, and some competitions will let you have internet access. Some, like ICPC, won't. But if you have a C++ in a nutshell book or something like that, definitely bring it for ICPC because you're going to want it.
Python has built-in documentation.
That's true.
And they give you access to the Java docs if you know how to read those.
Python gives you access to the Java docs?
In the competition, they give you HTML copies of the Java docs.
Yeah, so in Python, I don't know.
Built-in documentation.
Yeah, you run Python in the terminal, and then you can just type help, and as a parameter to the help function, pass in whatever you want to know about. That's how I do it when I don't have internet access. Or dir. Oh yeah, that's true. So a couple more resources. If you want to practice, there are a ton of startups who have said, I want to go out and I want to make a platform for interviews, or I want to go out and I want to make a competitive programming platform. So if you Google, you will find something, but the top ones are definitely HackerRank, LeetCode, and HackerEarth. There's also CoderByte and TopCoder, and then there I went out and I found one of those awesome lists on GitHub. If you've never heard of awesome lists, somebody says, hey, there's this topic, there's lots of content on it, I'm going to make a GitHub repo and call it awesome list blank. And so this one is awesome competitive programming. It's got links to things like websites to practice competitive programming, guides on how to practice, tips for specific competitions, and things like that. And if you want any of these links, we'll post these slides if they aren't already posted directly after the meeting. So, specifically if you're here for ICPC, that's actually all the content I have, but I would recommend breaking into your ICPC groups if you have your ICPC team here. If you only have two, maybe find somebody who isn't in the team and ask them if they'd want to work with you. Sign up for HackerRank and practice just one person being on the computer doing the programming, or you can check out previous ICPC problems. All the world competition problems are up online, and we also have a couple of problems direct from Dr. Franco, but do we think those are just world finals problems? So if you want the problems Dr. Franco gave us, we can definitely send those to you as well. Those would be past problems, obviously. Afterwards, it is currently 6:30, so in half an hour, ACMW is having a meeting. Mancy is back there, right? And Sam. So that's in Swift 800, right? 816, I was wrong. So it's in Swift 816 at 7 p.m. You can follow them. And you guys are going to be talking about conferences, DigiGirls, and Bearcat Coders, right? Yes. Cool. So check out ACMW directly after this. If you don't want to stick around to practice competitive programming, you are free to leave or just hang out, work on a project, maybe submit some pull requests for Oktoberfest, Hacktoberfest. So yeah, thank you everybody for coming out. And if you're here with your ICPC team and you want to practice, I'll be around. Anybody else who isn't on a team in exec, I think the rest of exec is on a team. So I'll be around to talk to you if you have any questions or clarifications. Dom, you had something to say?
Yeah, we should talk about the next meeting. We brought it up briefly. And I think we should get some ideas going for at least the next meeting. Like,
okay.
Is there anything specifically that people want to see?
Yeah, does anybody have, so like I said earlier in the meeting, we don't have a specific idea for our next meeting. Does anyone have a specific idea they'd like to see ACM do? Maybe not even for the next meeting, but for the future as well?
If anybody has an idea, we have like multiple people in favor of it, then we could like definitely put something together. But we don't have anything right now. Like I have the idea of like giving a web security talk. I don't know if that interests anybody, but if anybody has other opinions.
We talked about like cloud services, like going through setting up an EC2 on AWS.
Oh, I can do that. I like that. One of my hobbies is setting up EC2 instances. Not if you come to an MLH event. They'll get you $100 free.
What about TensorFlow and machine learning? You could set it up on YouTube. You can find out with your notebook.
Serverless.
Okay, it's always good.
Did you see how I spelled that? Serverless. Other ideas? I could have fun with a regex. You like? Wait, how do I pronounce it? Is it regex or are you guys messing with it? Yes, regex. I pronounce it regex. Other ideas? Just shout them out. Basic, like the programming language? We could do EC2 and containers in the same meeting pretty easily. If you said something and I didn't hear you, say it again.
Yeah, that's why they're doing it.
It's up there. I'm not going to add it again. I'm not adding web standards. Dom, people come to ACM meetings to have fun and eat pizza, not fall asleep listening to you talk about web standards. Okay, well, if you have any other ideas, come talk to me. Dom, Noah, Christian, and I don't know if we have, and Andrew back there are all on exec as well. Sorry if somebody's on exec and I missed you. Otherwise, feel free to work in small groups on HackerRank problems. HackerRank is my recommended one. If you want to do a different one, that's perfectly fine. And flag me down if you have any questions about ICPC, about competitive programming, or things like that. Thanks, everybody.